A dark police procedure involving a serial killer? Wow, I was a little too happy about that. Let's talk about Crescent City. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watch Your Pass, and I'm here to talk to you about Crescent City, which comes to theaters, digital, and on demand on August 16th, 2024. It is a new dark police procedural involving a serial killer, but it seems like maybe the killer might be one of their own. So should you watch this film? My hot take is I think you should actually pass on it. It has a really great cast. I love the cast. It has plenty of twists and turns. I like the overall kind of like concept of the film, but for me the story was a little bit too confusing and not as exciting as I was expecting it to be given the subject matter, and also it had a lot of very convenient moments. So ultimately, I think you should pass on it, but I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I like, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off when they get there. Before that, though, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free. I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So, in Crescent City, you have Detective Brian Sutter, who is a longtime vet of the cop. It takes place in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the fictional city of Crescent City, right outside of there. They are investigating a series of murders involving disfigured bodies and a mannequin. It seems like there's a serial killer going around, but when some of those killings come a little bit too close to home, it seems like maybe the killer might be one of their own. So, things I liked about this movie. The first, I love the cast. You have a really fun overall cast here. I talked to the director. This was filmed during the SAG-AFTRA strike, so they were able to film while, big productions were on strike, and so they got this fantastic cast, this really wonderful group of actors. You've got Esai Morales, who was fantastic as Luke Carson. You've got Terrence Howard, who was really good as Brian Sutter. I love Nicky Whelan in there. And then you also had Alec Baldwin as the captain. He doesn't have as much screen time as the others, but he still makes appearances throughout the film. And the second thing I loved, look, I love the concept. A dark police procedural with a serial killer. That's something I really should have loved. That's something I really should have dug into. And I did like the concept, but the film itself didn't really appeal to me as much as I was expecting to. So things I didn't love as much about this movie. The first, it had a confusing story. I feel like there were a lot of moving parts, a lot of details that were kind of dropped throughout that you had to keep track of in order to really kind of get a full picture of the movie. It was much easier to follow my second time watching it. I watched it twice for an interview, but the first time around, I was so confused. They would mention things here and there. And so it's definitely a movie that feels like there's too much going on. Second thing I didn't love as much, there were a lot of very convenient moments when they needed a new clue. Someone would come around and offer it. They would be like, oh, we're going to try this. And then, oh, I overheard you talking about that. Let me tell you a little more. Things like that. And the third thing I didn't love as much, it wasn't very exciting. For a thriller involving a serial killer, involving things like that, it wasn't super exciting. Didn't keep me on the edge of my seat. I'm not really sure why, but for me, it just didn't kind of grip me as much as I would expect a serial killer film to grip me. And the last thing I didn't love as much, there were audio issues. This might have been my screener, though. I'm not sure. I saw an early screener of it. It might have been my screener, but there were definitely some times where it felt like the audio was only coming out of one side, one ear. It also felt like there was speech that was muffled. Again, that could be audio. It could be because it wasn't mixed right for my screener. It might be fixed by the time it comes out. I don't know. I only have my screener. But for me, there were definitely some parts where I couldn't really understand the words. I had to go back and rewatch it just to hear what was going on. And that could have also contributed to some of the confusion in my story. So all that being said, Crescent City comes to theaters, digital, and on demand on August 16th, 2024. Like I said, I think you should probably pass on it. But if you do check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I would love to hear. And I'm going to really quickly go into a recap and ending. So if you don't know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So in Crescent City, you have a serial killer who is going around killing men and women. There really seems to be no rhyme or reason. Starts off with a killing. Someone comes to meet a person named Scarlett. He has a drink. It's this place that has a bunch of mannequins and a pool. It's a really weird place. But when he gets there, he has a drink. He starts to make him feel loopy. The person he's planning to meet swims over to him. And then as he's kind of losing consciousness, that person cuts his throat. And the person cuts his throat without wearing gloves. You think, hey man, you're a serial killer. You should wear gloves. They don't. That is how this starts. Now, we also have the main character, Brian Sutter, played by Terrence Howard. He is a police detective. He seems to be having some issues with a recent thing that has happened to him. He keeps seeing this kid in a red hoodie. And we find out more about why later. I don't want to tell you right now, but throughout the film, he has panic attacks when the situation becomes similar to what happened with that kid in the red hoodie. And it's recurring and it's really affecting his job. Like he'll be chasing someone, they'll turn around and he'll have a flashback and he like can't follow them and then they'll just run away. Things like that. So early on, the cops find a body and they go to find this person. It was the person that met Scarlett. It is a body that is decapitated, but the car is registered to someone that goes to Brian's church. So they do some digging. They find out this person was on a website, like some, I forget, it was like Relationship 666 or Friendship 666, something like that. Some sort of like dating website for Satanists, I think. So they go to Brian's church and start asking the pastor questions. And he's like, I don't know what, I've never heard of that site. You would expect a pastor would not hear of that site, although you don't know. You don't know what their private life is like. But he's like, I've never heard of that site. But one of the parishioners who's sitting right there overhears and is like, oh, I heard you were asking about Relationship 666. I know about it. My roommate goes on that site all the time and she's been missing. And you're like, wow, that is super convenient that she just overheard them talking to the pastor, that they were like apparently speaking loud enough in this church about satanic dating websites that she overheard it. And her roommate used to go there and she's been missing. They take this this girl, Sabrina, I believe is her name, to look for her roommate, Vanessa. Apparently she filed a missing persons report, told them where the last ping on her roommate's phone was, and they haven't done anything about it. Well, now the police are interested. They take Sabrina out to the last ping. It is this house in, I think, Crescent City. And when they get there, they find the body of Sabrina. They find out that this house was registered to Robert Hodges, who was beheaded 20 years ago, and his son, Charlie, was the prime suspect and disappeared. So after this event, Brian's partner, Garson, is at a bar and he meets up with someone, like someone gets off work and they end up hooking up at the bar. And this is weird because this person like worked at the bar. So they literally just got off work, sits down for a drink. They start talking, they hook up in the bar's bathroom. And you would think like if you worked there, you probably wouldn't want to like hook up there too. It feels like a, don't crap where you eat kind of situation, but this is what happens. That was a random weird scene. Then we find out that this person from Internal Affairs, this Detective Waters, who has been assigned to help them in this case, started doing her own research. She went on this like Friendship 666 website, created a profile, and started like messaging people. And the idea, I guess, was that she wanted to get to know some of the people because if they became victims, she would know more about them, which feels very, very tough to do. Like that feels like a wide net you would cast. I don't feel like everyone on this site is dying, although 2 people maybe are, but she does this. She meets up with this person. This person seems creepy, and she goes to meet up with him. She goes to meet up with him, gets in his car. He's wearing like a dominatrix mask. It looks very creepy. He says like nothing. And look, like if I got in someone's car for some weird thing, I at least want them to say hi or something. Maybe see their face. Nope. They drive. Eventually, he puts on some heavy music, and they start fighting. And he starts like trying to assault her. They fight. The police are luckily there because they were all in on this sting operation. And so he runs, they follow, and Brian is about to have him in his sights. And when the person turns around, Brian freezes because he looks like this kid in a red hoodie. It doesn't actually look like the kid, but it's a similar situation. And so Brian freezes, the person runs away, but they're able to like learn more about him. The car was registered to a Travis Reed, and inside was like a satanic pendant. And so they go to the Church of Satan to ask if they've ever heard of Travis Reed. Apparently they haven't. So they then go and stake out the this SAA, the Sex Addicts Anonymous group that Sabrina and her roommate Vanessa used to go to. So they're staking this out. All the anonymous people leave, and the priest of that church comes back with a suitcase. I'm like, why does he have a suitcase? That's so weird. So they go to check it out. And when they go to check it out, they go into his office, and wouldn't you know it, Travis Reed, this person who met up with the detective through this sex website, is there. The priest was hiding him. I guess Travis had strayed. He'd gone to like the satanic church. The priest was trying to bring him back, and so he was helping him out. But I don't know. Doesn't seem very good for the priest. So they all get arrested. Also, what we find out a little bit earlier is that Brian Sutter, the main character, and Detective Waters, the internal affairs person who was brought in, they've been having an affair. After they hook up, they're talking, and apparently she was brought in to investigate some old case, some sort of Crawford case where it was a drug bust that went bad. So she is investigating that, but then she's also here, I guess, to help out with the serial killer case too. Maybe they're related. I don't know, but she's just helping out. So back to the pastor and Travis Reed. Now they're interrogating the pastor and they're trying to get more information. And the pastor says that he's been hearing things around the church, that the killer, the mannequin killer, has been taking his victims to a place called Redwater Farms. You're like, wow, that is very convenient. Like they arrested this person on this very loose association, and he's been taking his victims to Redwater Farms. Now they have a place. Well, that doesn't seem to go well for Brian Sutter and Detective Waters because that is their rendezvous place. That's the place that they have been having their affair at, was Redwater Farms. So it seems like maybe someone's trying to set them up, or one of them is a killer. Who knows? But so the police go out to Redwater Farms. They find a house out there. They go in and raid it. And inside this house, there is another person who is dead with a mannequin head. The person is in a red hoodie, just like the one that Brian Sutter has been like visioning, like has been like, nightmaring about. And this is on the Redwater Farms like hookup spot, although it's not registered in Brian Sutter's name. So there's a little bit of a little bit of obfuscation there, but not enough, I think. So this person was Sabrina, the person that we that took the detectives to Vanessa, her roommate. Now Sabrina was killed, and she is now in Redwater Farm. So it seems like everything is kind of like coming down here. So after all of this, Garson, Sutter's partner, tells the captain that Brian's been having like blackouts, and he's a little bit worried about it, which is a very weird term because Garson has been very much like, I do my own thing kind of cop, and now he's going and ratting on his partner. The captain calls him in, tells him this story about like an old detective who was super good. He was like jumping over buildings, all that stuff, like diving across cars, doing everything. But apparently they found out that he was always high on energy drinks. Those are the exact words that they use. He was always high on energy drinks, which didn't sound right. I don't really know if you can get high on energy drinks. Hyped up maybe, but not high on energy drinks. And eventually it all came crashing down when he was driving home one day, crashed from this energy drink high and, swerved into oncoming traffic and killed a family. So the captain was basically telling him like, look, I know you're having like blackouts or something. You're probably exhausted. Go get some rest, get your head in order. So Brian's like, you know what? You're right. I will do that. And he leaves. After this, he also comes clean to his wife, tells his wife that, he had an affair, and it seems like they're okay. Now, Brian's at church thinking all this over after he confesses to his wife, and the cleaning person in the church is talking to him, and Brian, like, just mentions, like, hey, like, apparently someone in the church told the pastor that the killer takes the victims to Redwater Farms, and the cleaning person's like, it was me. Like, again, very convenient. The person in the church that he's randomly talking to is the person that found out about Redwater Farms. Well, that he says that your partner Luke told me to ask around. So it seems like maybe Luke knew about Redwater Farms, or maybe he heard about Redwater Farms and was telling to like ask around to see who else knew about Redwater Farms. I don't know. Luke is not a religious person. He goes to Brian church. I don't know why Luke would have told this cleaning person, but we get some more information. Maybe Luke's the killer. Who knows? So after all of this, the captain calls in Brian and Luke, and he says basically like, Internal Affairs has reopened an investigation into the Crawford case. There was a bag of money missing, and the kid who was shot, you told me that it was an unidentified gun, but it was a police-issued weapon. So what's going on? Someone talk, and they like none of them talk. And so he suspends them both. He takes their badges and their guns. So after this, Brian and Luke are talking at a bar. They're just drinking, and Brian goes up to Luke. He's like, look, I know you started the rumor about Redwater Farms. And Luke's like, no, it wasn't me. I mean, it was me, but like I heard it from a blonde at this bar I hooked up with. Remember that random weird hookup earlier? Luke says that was the person who told him about Redwater Farms. So that was the connection. And so I guess he then asked the church people, maybe, I guess, maybe because the pastor mentioned, but that was his story. Now, while this is happening, while Brian and Luke are at the bar, Detective Waters, Jackie, comes to Brian's house and talks to his wife. And his wife is like, I know you had an affair. Like, get out of my house. And Jackie's like, well, did you also know he's under investigation for murder? And apparently this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The affair wasn't. She was willing to walk through that. But the fact that her like husband's lover told her that her husband was under investigation for murder was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Brian's wife leaves. She takes his daughter, and now Brian is alone. So Brian is sulking in his house, and the next day, the cops all come and they search Brian's house. I guess he is suspected of murder. Luke is back on the force, so he's not suspected. It's just Brian. They search his house, and in his shed, there's a head, Sabrina's head. The girl that was in Redwater Farms. Her head is in his shed. So they arrest Brian and they bring him in, and the captain's talking to him like, how could you do this? Like, what's going on? And Brian's like, how stupid do you think I am? Which is a very good question. Like, why would I keep a head in my own house? Like, how dumb do you think I am? And the chief's like, oh, maybe it was hubris. Maybe you thought no one could touch you. But Brian's like, look, I can prove it wasn't me. I just need 3 hours. And the chief's like, okay, I guess 3 hours. That seems like a bad idea, but police assign Luke, his partner, and Jackie, his lover slash internal affairs person, to watch him. And they all go to this bar that Luke hooked up with that girl at. And they get there, they ask for the girl, she's right there. And he's like, did you tell my partner about Redwater Farms? And she's like, yes, I did. And he's like, oh, I'm proof. And then she's like, but that's because that lady next to you told me. And you're like, whoa, another twist. And Jackie's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have never seen this person in my life. She's like, I'm sorry, Jacqueline. So she knows her name. So Jackie apparently told the blonde lady about Redwater Farms. She told Luke. Luke told the church. It's a very weird game of telephone, but apparently this clears up Brian. And so now they go to search Jackie's place. And she's like, that's fine. Come on over. I got nothing to hide. And while they're searching Jackie's place, they find a mannequin. And so, boom, Jackie pulls her gun out. She holds them all hostage. They're like, don't do this, don't do this. And eventually Jackie runs off. They pursue her in a car chase. It's a pretty fun car chase. Like, it's not like crazy, but they do like have some exciting turns and things like that. So they pursue her. Eventually she loses control, flips her car, somehow flips out of the car. I guess she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. She's like out of the car when they find her, and she dies. And when this happens, we also get more information on what happened with that kid. So apparently this was a drug bust. It was the Crawford case. The kid was selling drugs. They go to bust him. He runs. Brian and Luke pursue. Brian has the kid, like, tells him to stop. He tells him to stop. The kid has his hands up, and then he reaches into his pants. Brian freaks out, shoots him in the head. Turns out the kid was reaching for his ID. Probably shouldn't have reached for his ID. Not good. But also Brian probably shouldn't have shot him. So they shot him. And Brian was like freaking out, and Luke comes up. And he's like, we'll say it was some unidentified person. And Luke says, look, I got you. Don't worry about it. So now, apparently, because of Jackie's running away and the mannequin, Brian's off the hook. And I'm like, there was still a head in his shed. They should still probably investigate him. Like, how does a head end up in your shed? I feel like you need to at least look into that. Jackie had a mannequin. She did run, but Jackie had a mannequin. Brian had a head in his shed. But I guess that's fine. The captain offers him his job back. Brian turns it down. He comes clean. He tells him the whole story about how he shot the kid. What we also learn here is that Brian shot the kid, but Luke took the money. And Luke said it'd be better if they both had something on them. So Luke took the money, Brian shot the kid, and they were quiet about it. But Brian now comes clean because he says, like, look, I'm done lying. I don't want that on my conscience anymore. So he denies his job and leaves. The captain puts out an APB on Luke. So Brian goes back home, and when he gets back home, boom, he gets knocked out. He wakes up. We see him in that creepy pool area with the mannequins, and he's feeling hazy. It looks like maybe he had the same drink that the first person did. And we see Luke. Luke, his partner, is there. And he basically tells him that he was the killer. He tried to pin it on Brian at first, but then when Jackie was there, he pivoted to Jackie, and it would have worked out perfectly fine if Brian hadn't come clean and indicted them all. So now, apparently Luke is going to kill Brian to, I don't know, make it go away. I'm not sure. But we find out why Luke does this. His dad apparently was a philanderer. He loved women, and he, cheated on his mom. And I guess it literally killed his mom. When his mom found out, it actually killed her. So Luke decided to get revenge on his dad. That's why Luke killed his dad and beheaded him. And so we find out that Luke is not actually Luke Carson. He is Charlie Hedges. His dad was Robert Hedges, the person who owned that house where they found one of the first victims. That was Luke's dad. Luke had a new name. He killed his dad. And then after that, he was killing people who were I guess adulterers, essentially. Like, they would go, he was sickened by them when they would cheat on their partners, and so he was sickened that they would do that for moments of pleasure, and so he would kill them. And Luke also says that he paid Tanya to say that it was Jackie. So Tanya, the person at the bar who said it was Jackie, she was paid by Luke. Jackie's apparently a good actor. Okay. So after this, Brian and Luke fight. It's actually a pretty decent fight. Like it's pretty like rough looking. It doesn't feel super choreographed. It feels like a fight that you would have like two people who are like kind of brawling for their lives do. And eventually, Luke has Brian in a headlock, like trying to strangle him, and Brian has his hands tied because Luke tied his hands, but he tied them pretty loosely. So Brian like wraps it around Luke's neck. They're both strangling. They're both strangling. It feels like maybe they're going to strangle each other in this weird kind of embrace. The screen goes black, and then we find out that Brian's in the hospital. There's a news story up about how Luke was actually Charlie Hedges. He was the mannequin killer. He was arrested, and Brian is recovering in the hospital. His family's there. It feels like his family, his wife is like hesitant, but feels like she's going to at least try to rebuild their relationship. She at least says that he's going to stay in his daughter's life. I don't know if their relationship's going to be fine, but he's at least going to have some of his family back after everything he did. As he's in the hospital, the captain comes, gives him back his badge. I guess Brian's back on the force. I guess they didn't worry about the whole like corruption thing. They're like killing a kid and then, changing it. Also, that like head that was found. I guess they just said that that was probably Luke. But so Luke was the killer. Jackie is dead. Brian is recovering, and I guess all's well that ends well. So that is Crescent City. Like I said, I think you should probably pass on it. It was a little bit too kind of like convoluted and confusing of a story. But if you do check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know what you like and didn't like. I would love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you. You have Detective Brian Sutter, Sutton, Sutters, Sutton, sorry.